Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Senate Democratic Caucus at our first gathering for 2022, for the 2022 legislative session. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm the majority leader in the Senate, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our weekly updates on the work that we're doing here in the Senate. To kick off our session, I'd love to turn it over to our President Pro Tem, Becca Balint.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And special thanks to our majority leader and our whip, Senator Clarkson, Senator Hooker. You've done a tremendous job in the quote unquote off session, trying to keep us on task. So I really, really appreciate it. The big news today, which I'm sure all of you know because you're news hounds and you care a lot about the work that we all do together, is that we seem to have a tentative agreement on a package that will hopefully shore up the pensions long term. And shortly we will, I'm assuming we're going to hear from the chair of the task force. Is that what's next on the docket, Senator Clarkson? And so I want to just say there's been a tremendous amount of work done by Senator White, also one of our colleagues in the minority party, Senator Parent, and also Senator Kitchell, who's been instrumental in helping this process. So hundreds and hundreds of hours have gone in to try to find a package that everyone could get behind. Certainly the unions are going out to their members this week to explain how in some instances they even got more than they asked for. And I know Senator White will talk to that in a moment. But the best thing for us to understand is our idea, our vision on the Senate side of bringing everyone together to talk around the table, to have the stakeholders hashing it out together, seems to be a path that was a success. And I'm really grateful for all of the folks who serve on government operations who were instrumental in making sure that the task force was set up well and ran smoothly. So feeling very, very hopeful and positive this morning. Obviously, it's not done till the ink is on the page and it's all signed up, but right now it's looking like we're headed in a very positive direction. So Senator White, if you don't mind taking us through, that would be so helpful. Thanks.
So Senator Clarkson, did you want me to go or did you have something to say first?
No, I think that the floor is yours, Senator White.
Okay, so just to remind us that in last year in Act 75, we set up a task force of 12 members. And to remind people out there who was on the task force, there were 3 members from the NEA, 2 from the VSEA, 1 from the Vermont Troopers Association, 3 House members, 2 senators, and Commissioner Pichek. And then the Deputy Treasurer was a non-voting member. But just so that you remember that this was a very balanced committee with a lot of input from the unions themselves. We've had 18 meetings since July, and the last one was on Monday. Actually, I believe that was yesterday. It took a while for the trust to build up by all the committee members or task force members so that people felt confident that they were being heard, they were being listened to, and that their input was actually valuable. And it turned out that in the end, I think everybody felt that it had been a respectful process and people were heard. And the way it worked out was we had a lot of ongoing conversations, and then each of the unions would make a proposal for what they felt was a reasonable solution. We would send that to the actuaries to come back with their analysis of whether it got us to where we needed to go. Then it would be refined and it would be sent out again. We went through that process 3 times with different proposals. And in the end, the proposal that was proposed and accepted. It was proposed by each of the groups. The NEA made their proposal, the VSEA made their proposal, and the VTA made their proposal. And it included, each proposal included revenue from the state, increased revenue from the state. So I'm going to say that what it does is, as Senator Ballant said, it preserves the defined benefit system that we have. And that was really important to all the members of the task force and to most of us, to preserve that defined benefit system. It addresses many issues that have been lingering for a while. And in the end, everybody is sharing in the pain, because there is going to be pain from both the state and from the employees, but everybody benefits from much from a preserved system that will go into the future. It will not implode on itself. The report and all the documents can be found if you go to the Vermont General Assembly website and then go to other committees. And under other committees, you'll find pension task force, and everything is on there. If anybody has any problems with that, let me know and I'll make sure that, and as summaries are being developed, they'll be posted on there also. So there are still some documents to come to be on there. So I'm not going to go into any detail, but I will say that this package has been accepted. All 12 people on the task force voted for it as a whole package. We didn't take any votes on each proposal, but on the whole package, and all 12 people voted for the whole package. I am going to tell you what our schedule is for the next couple days, and then I'm going to ask Jane to talk about something. So what we're going to do is tomorrow in committee, we're going to hear from each of the 3 unions, and we're going to go over the summary and the recommendations with Chris Roop and Becky Wasserman. Then on Friday, we're going to have a much more detailed, the whole day will be spent hearing from people. As many as possible of the task force members will join us to testify and to talk about how they came to their conclusions. And then we'll go from there, but Friday is going to be fully devoted to it, but Wednesday we'll have an introduction. So I will say that most of Act 75 focuses on the pension system, and that's what we dealt with at the beginning. But there's a huge outstanding liability around the healthcare costs. And I would like Jane just to briefly address that, and then we'll go into more detail on that again on Friday.
Thank you, Jeanette. Certainly the focus has been on the pension underfunding, but last year, the Senate actually tried to make some progress on getting our healthcare benefits for retirees funded. Right now, all that cost is borne by the general fund in a pay-go method, which means that every dollar of cost is being funded by $1 of general fund. Because there's no pre-funding, unlike the pensions, there's no compounding, there's no investment return, there's nothing. And I think most people would be very surprised that both the teachers and the state employees' health care benefits for when they retire has not been specifically funded except by default by the general fund. And so, for example, in the state employees, the underfunded liability for the healthcare benefit for teachers when they retire is actually higher than the pension underfunding. And I'll tell you how much. The pension underfunding is about $1 billion, and the healthcare underfunding liability is pushing $1.7 billion. So in talking with the two unions, it became obvious that people were concerned about economic security when they retire. And certainly the pension is part of it, but healthcare benefits are also a critical part of that economic security. So for teachers, because the healthcare benefits had been paid for a number of years until 2015 out of the corpus of the pension fund, their underfunding actually was exacerbated and was closer to 2 billion. And the healthcare underfunding was about 1.5 billion. So this gave an opportunity to really put together both areas of retiree benefits and set us on a path for pre-funding. And so what this does is create it creates a mechanism for the state to fulfill its obligation and starts pre-funding both retiree benefits, healthcare benefits. And it is all, I want to be clear, the education fund would be paying that cost for currently employed teachers. And that needs to be very clear, where the general fund continues to pay the cost of healthcare for retired teachers out of the general fund. So by getting us into a pre-funding for these two healthcare benefit plans for retirees, we are going to be able to reduce the healthcare liability for state employees by almost 900 million, and by and teachers by almost 840 million. So this package will actually reduce that underfunded liability being carried on the state's ledger by a little more than $2 billion. So it is a very significant step forward to securing the retiree benefits, and particularly the healthcare benefits, which we have not really talked about, but in fact are really important. In order to do that, it means that we have to start pre-funding the healthcare. And for teachers, we started that last year. The House wasn't in a position to want to agree. So we left the money in reserve and have it this year. With state employees, we're doing the same thing, but that would obviously, to start funding a commitment that has really never been funded in a is putting additional 22 million. However, because the contributions were moved upward, and Jeanette can speak to this better than I, but they're well within the range of what is the norm for a defined benefit plan, actually less than what municipal employees are paying. It allowed us to take money that is freed up to address the underfunding. So I just want to stress there's really two pieces to this. It's the actual benefit of the pension benefit, but it's also the healthcare benefit for retirees. And both are critically important, and they both had significant underfunding. So I just wanted to make it clear. The other thing that the employees were saying, look, we want a commitment that you're going to continue to make progress on the underfunding of the pension system. And so we know that with our one-time payments, it actually reduces an amortized liability payment. And so we are going to be doing the normal ADEC plus until we can get the system up to 90% funded, an additional 15 million starting. It will be kind of phased in, but in 3 years. So we will be doing an ADEC plus to help deal with the underfunding. So I just want to say, in the end, we've shored up the healthcare benefit, the pension system. We will have reduced the underfunding liability by over $2 billion. And we've really worked pretty much with, although there will be some additional money needed to start funding our obligation for teachers that and state employees who are currently working and want to have that benefit when they retire, to get that pre-funding mechanism in place. And that has been out there for us to deal with for a number of years. And this, we feel, is the time to really get our fiscal house in order and deal with both components of those retiree benefits. So that's what we have offered. It does require some additional funding simply because of on the pre-go, not the pre-go, but the prepay on healthcare. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
So before we go to any questions that people might have, and you can look at the report. I'm not going to go into detail about what the details are on the employee contributions or any of that, because you can look at that, and it's just a little complicated to do that in 15 minutes. But I do want to say that many of you have probably heard from, excuse me, from the corrections people about a separate increasing their benefits to be more similar to the law enforcement benefits. And we simply did not have time. The actuaries worked on it, and it needs to be budget neutral to the system. And what came back from the actuaries was that if they were to do this, the employee contribution would have to be 34% of their income. That is not going to fly. So we have worked with the treasurer and with the SEA to allow them to continue to work with the actuaries and the treasurer to see if they can make some adjustments and come in with a plan that is budget neutral, but that helps the DOC corrections officers. And we've given them till April 15th to come up with that. Their hope is that they can come up with it much sooner. And then what we've done is guaranteed them that if they come up with such a plan that meets the parameters, we'll put it into the bill as it moves through the Senate and the House.
Great. Thank you both so much for this work. We all applaud your work on our behalf, and it's very exciting to have a unanimous vote on that. Are there any questions that senators have at the moment for Jeanette or for Jane? Yes, Cheryl.
Thank you. And thank you, Jeanette, and your committee for all the work that you've done, and Jane. Just a quick comment, perhaps, Jeanette, on teachers who are already retired and how they're affected.
Current retirees are not impacted by any of the changes.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Ruth, and then Chris.
Thank you, Allison. I think this question is for Jane, but I was just scrolling through the report, trying to find a table that sort of summarized what you said to us. Is there a table? Do you know what page it might be on?
I don't know as if it got incorporated into into the report. I can share it, that summarizes the financial aspects of this. Jeanette, did my summary form get put in the report?
I am not sure, because I know that they were still finishing the report last night. So if it isn't in there, it will be put on the page itself, on the website page. And
the reason I wanted to do that is because each group is going to say, well, how did I look compared to, whatever. Yeah. And so it came out very, very close, within a couple $1 million. We did more on the one-time benefit on the teacher's pension because the underfunding is so much greater there, but we did more on the employee healthcare because the underfunding there was greater than the pension. So, but in the aggregate, they came out in terms of the package very, very close between the two systems. So we can share that piece of that information with you.
Yeah,
Right.
Great.
and if you look at both of the three packages, actually, you can pick out from those packages what is being put in from the General Assembly and how it fits into there. But Jane did a summary of kind of combining them.
And
Great.
would that summary include the funding source, general fund versus education fund?
Yes, yes,
also?
it does.
Great. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing
I
it.
just, one thing I want to be clear, past underfunding is still being paid out of the general fund. We're not moving any costs of prior underfunding. It's only the current pre-pay for teachers or state employees who are currently employed. All that underfunding obligation in the past, prior to this agreement, it will continue on the general fund, which is really not an insignificant amount of general fund expenditure. So I just want to make that clear, because I think, people are concerned about the education fund. What would be the impact? It is basically, and the House is agreeing to do what we proposed last year in the budget, and that is to have, just like you do with other benefits, they are funded out of the ed fund for current teachers. And then there had to be a one-time payment to seed the fund, so to speak. So just want to state that, because that's been a source of concern. Are you trying to offload something onto and nothing is being offloaded. It was never funded. That's the problem that we're addressing.
Right.
So just Jane's role here has been really crucial, because the task force came up with all the recommendations of what should be the employee contributions, what suggestions about what should be the state contributions, all of that. And there's a lot of detail in those. If you look at the employee contribution levels and the COLA and all of that. But how the money actually fit together and where it came from and how it was applied in different places was really Jane's. That wasn't our, we weren't able to figure that out. Jane has been very helpful and has the House money committees. So this, we owe a great deal of gratitude to Jane for this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. One more question on this, Chris Bray, and then I think we're going to move to Brian Campion.
Thanks so much. It's repetitious, but it's genuine. I want to thank my colleagues who've worked so hard at this to sort out something that's very, has a lot of intensity and controversy built into it. And so I know I don't want to count chickens before they hatch. I know there's still more work to do just on this piece, but I'm hoping you have a second wind or something that can allow us to think about the many, many constituents we all have who have no such retirement plan that's anything akin to what we're talking about here, because that's the base of Vermonters who are also helping pay into that. And I know we've worked with the Treasurer's Office for several years running, trying to find a sort of a more citizen retirement funding plan. And I just hope that that we'll have some opportunity to look into that again and maybe make some progress there, because I know there are a lot of people out there who are in rough shape when it comes to their own retirement accounts. Thank you.
I think we will take that up. I don't want it to be conflated with this issue at all, because they are separate issues and we need to solve both of them. But we will be taking it up. And just for your information, when we had the task force meetings in Act 75, it says that we would have public hearings, S, plural. So we had one, the task force had one public hearing, and there simply was not time to have a second public hearing after the packages were presented, the proposals were presented. So we have promised, I have promised the Government Operations Committee might try and roll me on this one, but I've promised that we would have a public hearing now that the packages are out there and that the proposals are out there. So we're hoping to have that either next Wednesday or Thursday evening.
Great. Well, thanks. I was just hoping that, exhaustion wouldn't preclude going on to the other discussion of the other, and I don't want to conflate them, but just while we're talking about retirements, thank you.
Good reminder, because that's a great proposal that the treasurer has made. I think we will have plenty of time to discuss this further. Thank you both so much for the big picture of this historic work, and we're really so beyond grateful to both of you and to everybody who worked on it. Chris Bray, Senator Bray, why don't you take it away in terms of what we're doing with the Climate Council recommendations and your work this week in Senate Natural Resources and Environmental Justice?
Sure. So we are, I think, probably like every committee in the sort of setting the table stage where we're bringing all the new bills and some that were on the back burner back onto the table, having a discussion and working through them. And I'll just go pretty quickly through, and people have questions they can follow up here or later. But we are, our weatherization initiative that we started last year has really gotten off to a good start. And we're looking at how we can, we've done roughly 30,000 homes in about 15 to 20 years. Now we're looking to do 90,000 homes in the next decade. So it's a substantial acceleration of a program that saves people money, reduces pollution, and creates employment. So it's good all the way around. And we want to keep that going and put it on a steady footing for the next decade. We're also looking at a clean heat standard. So that is, you want a weatherized home, so you're using less energy, but what kind of energy are you using in it? Can we move from a reliance of fossil fuels to using more electricity, which has been renewably generated? Those are our two major initiatives around energy bills. We're also revisiting Act 250. There's a concern that we are going to lean into this one. There's, I would say, some people believe that Act 250 slows down all development. It makes it more expensive. We don't believe that, but we want to get the facts out there, sort things through, and find ways to ensure that we can be supportive of the Senate's and the legislature's interests, everyone's interests actually, in more accelerated development, smart growth, so that we do development in our village centers, downtowns, et cetera, including housing and affordable housing. So we are working, we've had meetings going on actually for 2 months already to get that work rolling. We're also taking up Senator Rahm Hinsdale's environmental justice bill. So I would say that, talking about weatherization, we have had, I think our programs, our hearts, our minds have been in the right place. We have done work for decades for lower income Vermonters, but we've also discovered in the last year, as we tried to reach out to communities, that we're not always as effective as we could be in terms of reaching particular subsets. So Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people with limited language, English language proficiency. So we, and even the way that we do our outreach, although we can have the most genuine and open door policy in our committee, there are a lot of people who can't ever make it to a committee, whether it's in the State House itself or on a Zoom session. So we want to improve our process for building a better way of working with people. And it's very consistent with what we've already done, but we know we could do more there. There are fish and wildlife bills. It wouldn't be a session if we didn't have fish and wildlife bills. So there's, I'd say, a give and take every year between people interested in reforming fish and wildlife and I would say making it less oriented to hunting, fishing, trapping, and others who would want to make sure we make no changes in those areas. So again, it's controversial every time, and we'll be looking into how we can make progress that reaches a balance.
Right.
So I think
Thank you.
that's it for, we've had.
Thank you. It's that's a full week, and we're very grateful. I think we'd like to turn now, because our time is so tight. I'd like to turn now to Senator Campion, because education issues are at the forefront. We've been hearing from our constituents about the changes the Secretary announced last Friday, and I know people are eager to have an update from Senator Campion, who's our chair of Senate Education. Ryan.
Thanks, Allison. I think I can be brief. Senate Education is going to take testimony this afternoon from our usual suspects who give us a good idea of what's happening on the ground, as well as respond to what the agency and the Department of Health are rolling out, I think, officially right now at their press conference with details. And so we're going to hear both from Dr. Levine and Secretary French. They're going to take us through the details of the plan, why they're moving in this direction. And as I said to Secretary French over the weekend, and he's hoping to show that it's a good idea by later this week, and is really, I think, these are more my words than his, asking for some space and some time for Dr. Levine and for him to answer questions, to explain why they're moving in this direction, et cetera. I think having heard from a number of colleagues, I think there are a couple of outstanding things that we'll be digging into in addition to what I just outlined, one of which will be, as usual, what do you need from us? Are there supplies that are needed that we might need to give resources to in budget adjustment, et cetera, or be helpful with? And then the other question that's come up from a few folks is, should we be allowing school districts to count days when students are not in session, but rather remote? When a school, for example, might be closed for a day or longer, can those days go toward the total number of school days? And so we'll be hearing their response to that as well. It's an interesting question. Anybody who's been watching the news or reading the papers today, a lot of different areas have been grappling with it. And I can guarantee, will keep kids at the focus. What is best for kids? We know that the research is out there that says, ideally, it's great when kids can be in school when they're learning, and also for socialization reasons, and also just to generally prevent some of the social, again, just broadly, the social emotional change hardships that kids are feeling right now. So I think the question will be, they'll probably respond saying, hey, absolutely, no question about it. If this is about getting to days, they support it. I'm inclined to think they're going to come back and say, no, this is just me speculating on, again, what I'm seeing across the country and a little bit from the federal government. No, kids deserve 180 days in school, 175 days in school, and we're going to stretch out the school year. Again, I could be completely wrong, and maybe I shouldn't even be speculating on this. So that's where things are right now. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Ongoing staffing issues, I'll just say we did ask the NEA to come back in today to talk to us a little bit about that, particularly how we can get more teachers into the classroom and for them to take some time and assess their expedited teacher education programs and certification, and whether or not what they're doing makes sense or if they need some adjustments there. So really, I would, in conclusion, say we're going to be learning as everyone else is learning, and happy to come back with a full report either next caucus, but I would think people will read about it in the press well before that.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Does anybody have a question about this? Because I know it's timely and people have been hearing a lot from constituents. And if you have things you want to make sure that we have chair and vice chair of education with us and committee members, is there anything people would like to ask or make sure is discussed today?
I'd like to better.
Chris Bray,
sorry.
Dick Sears, and then Chris Bray.
I'd like to better understand the move away from contract tracing.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a protection. And I just read where we're going the opposite direction now. And I don't understand why the schools wouldn't want to make sure that class, make sure that kids are not infected.
Yeah, no, I think that is something that Secretary French and Dr. Levine will be addressing, why they're moving in that direction. I think the little bit that I've gotten on all of this is that the disease has changed so much, and are there ways to actually do this effectively in the classroom? I'll say also, having spoken with some local people in my district and around the state a little bit this weekend, is the line to the nursing office is out the door, and we're going to start to lose nurses, I think, if we continue business as usual. And so it's an incredible amount of pressure, and again, it might scientifically be the wrong to stay as things are going, the wrong way to go. But again, we'll find out more. Jane?
Great.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you. We have Chris Bray, and then Chris Pearson, and then Jane Kitchell.
Thanks, Senator Campion, for the update. I have a question. It's a little bigger than just what's going on at schools with rapid tests, and maybe this is a request to the caucus at large, or leadership at large, is to help us keep track. There's a lot of moving pieces for individual at-home testing. Like if you're an insured, you just became eligible for reimbursement, but that's 140,000 Vermont insureds. And then kids are getting, or families of children are getting free tests, but how are they getting them? And then it's kind of a mixed picture depending on who you are, what category you're in. How do you get tested, and how do you actually get those tests? I'm getting quite a bit of constituent email related to sorting that out. Schools and other venues where people are now getting tested. And I know it's changing really almost daily, so it's not an easy target to track, and it's harder still to explain to constituents who are getting frustrated.
So I might just say, if you have specific questions, if you have constituents saying, hey, what's the best route for me to go? I would reach directly out to the Department of Health on that. And Senator Lyons is on our committee, which is great. And so she'll also, I'm sure, be weighing in on what's happening.
Right. Our time is getting tighter. So I've got Chris Pearson and then Jane, and then we'll hopefully get to Anthony before we have to end. Chris Pearson.
Just to follow up on this idea that remote days, would currently mean that they extend the school year into January. I really hope we will push on that. Just like our own behavior, we're seeing that maybe a short break, to the point about the nurses. I mean, there's cases last week in my house, 2 elementary school kids. I got a contact tracing call, I think, every day. So it's really exploding, and it breaks my heart that the superintendent's sort of thinking like, geez, 2 weeks of remote would be a great solution, but we don't want to work until July, extend the school year. So I hope you'll just poke around that. I agree that it's important to keep kids in the classroom as much as possible. We've seen the data, but a short break could also really help stop the community spread. It's at least worth us thoroughly understanding. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I agree. We will jump into that. I would say, I'm wondering how much flexibility is there, and we'll dig into this also. In other words, snow days are usually built in, those kinds of things. I don't know where folks are with that, but yeah, I think it's a good point. Jane?
Right. Thanks.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that has received emails from teachers concerned about the discontinuing of contract tracing and surveillance testing. What would be really helpful is, after today's testimony, if you could have some kind of a summary of this is, we have heard from educators concerned. The committee took testimony, and either you concur or, if you could give us a response back so that
Sure.
there's an affirmation that that the policy committee took testimony and either says yes for, it may not be, what we would prefer, but because of the fact that it's just proliferating, you'd be contacting just gazillions of people or whatever. But I would find it very helpful if we could have a summary saying, we heard this concern, we took testimony, and this is, this is where this issue stands or something.
Yeah, happy to do a couple paragraphs.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
I would
Jen. That's
also
great.
just, if I may, Senate Education, I'll announce his meeting at 1:30.
Dan has COVID.
1:30, great. We have a minute and a half. I feel like a VPR reporter. We have a minute and a half, Anthony Polina. Would you be kind of just to update the public on all the things that are going through to make town meeting healthier and safer?
Sure. We've been working on a series of bills that came out of the Government Operations Committee, but have also passed the Senate to help local officials and the public remain safe during this town meeting day season, but also make sure that local government can function adequately. A couple of things we've done. We've allowed town meetings to change their date to a later date if they feel that that's a safer move, and also allow towns to switch from floor votes to Australian ballots. Now, this is just for this particular town meeting day. In terms of open meetings, we've allowed for totally remote meetings for town committees without any designated location and without any designated staff at that location. We've also decided to allow the warning of warning of meetings electronically, so that people will not have to just warn their things on a paper notice. We're not requiring signatures for candidates for municipal office this year. It's only this year. And we're not going to require commingling of school ballots for school budget votes and other votes. What that means is that if you're commingling the ballots from a school district, it means like 20 or so people have to sit together at a table and count ballots together. What this is going to allow them to do, if they choose to, is just do their vote count locally and report the results to the district commission.
Great. Thank you, Anthony Polina. We've come in on time, and thank you, public, for joining us. Thank you, caucus members, for joining us. We encourage you to go to the legislative website to follow our committee work. If you have been excited by some of these issues, please follow them along. All our work is accessible to the public, which is quite exciting and historic. So thank you all. We'll see you next Tuesday at 12:15. Thanks a million.